What's going on YouTube? Ryan back and Alex back from Dopemon once again. Today we're going to be talking about NHL Free Agency, specifically in this video, day one of NHL Free Agency. That's October 9th of last week. So if you want to see any other signings or on certain days, specifically maybe if you're looking for Taylor Hall, Alex Pietrangelo, those will be on separate videos. You will link them down in the description and all that for you. Or visit our channel where they'll be on there as well. And we're going to get this quickly started off, give our opinions on each of the big players. We're not going to talk about every little signing, obviously, but anything that we think moved the dial a little bit.
And so would you like to get started with Kubilik, Ryan?
Yeah, Dominique Kubilik, I think, is the first guy the big name to be, at least on Cap Friendly's list here. Signed back in Chicago, re-signed as an RFA deal, 3.7 cap hit for the next 2 years. Dominique Kubilik was one of the finalists for Rookie of the Year. He had, let's pull him up. He had 30 goals, hit that 30-goal plateau, 46 points, 68 games, obviously in a shortened season due to COVID. But I think is a good signing here at that cap hit and is part of the future of Chicago. Absolutely. He's still very young. He's 25.
He's 25, yeah. With his age, he is what he is. And so... I think it's a fairly bargain contract considering that he's going to keep putting up 30-goal seasons. That's, how long for less than $4 million for a 30-goal scorer. That's impressive.
Yeah, I think even if he regresses a little bit into the 2025 range, 3.7 is a great cap hit for that kind of player. Mm-hmm. Next guy, Alex, Henrik Lundqvist.
I love this signing for Washington. They saved some money on a backup goalie. It's huge for Washington. They've had a huge question in goaltending last season, and this is an answer for it. It says that they have good hopes in the goaltending that they have now. And I know a lot of people are freaking out about hey, he's coming into the same division, but this is a goaltender who's faced goal scorers in this division. Who better to have on your team?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, out of every player in this free agent pool, seeing Henrik Lundqvist in a Capitals jersey is going to be the weirdest one.
It's
going to be the weirdest one for me. Goes to a division rival, like you said. He'll be happy he doesn't have to try to stop Ovi anymore because that man has lit him up his whole life.
Only in practice now.
Only in practice. You got to deal with that now. He'll be probably the backup, but with the shortened season, there's probably more a 1-1A situation with Ilya Samsonov now that Braden Holtby is gone, and we'll talk about that later in Washington. I think it was a great move for Washington. You actually predicted Lundqvist to go to Vancouver.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And all the goalie swaps were everywhere that day, but I think Washington might have been the second best fit. He's going to a similar situation where he's the number 1B2 guy with a young kid that he can help bring up to speed and make them a solid starter. And 905 save percentage in 30 games last year. So he's not Henrik Lundqvist prime anymore, obviously, but
no,
I think
certainly not.
I still think he can get the job done. All right, next guy I know you want to talk about, Matt Murray.
Yes, I am. I was a big fan of the trade when it happened, and I'm a big fan of the signing now. I think Ottawa's a huge winner there. They have their bona fide starting goaltender, and it makes them competitive now, which I think is really important because they could continue this kind of rebuild forever because it's Ottawa. They could keep tanking, keep being the bottom 5 in the league. But with this, they're saying no. We're ready to get our our talent, young talent, into the NHL. Let's be ready. Let's be competitive now, and make a playoff run maybe. So
yeah, Matt Murray's an
really happy for it.
Matt Murray's an interesting case. He signed for 4 years, $6.25 million. Still only 26 years old. I think people think that Matt Murray is older than he is because he's already won 2 Stanley Cups. Obviously, he was the guy that the Pittsburgh Penguins kept over Marc-Andre Fleury in the last expansion draft. They ended up going to Vegas.
And then picked Jari over him.
Now. I think Matt Murray at that cap hit, 6.25, is a risk for Ottawa because he hasn't had a couple really good seasons in a row. Last year, he had a sub 900 save percentage in 38 games. Year before, he had 919. Year before that, he had 907. So like he's been a little bit flaky since his
Hmm.
coming out party in the 15, 16, 16, 17 season. But I think it's a risk that
Yeah,
Ottawa can
yeah,
take right now.
for sure. Especially in a 4-year deal. That's that the 4 years will be shorter than for instance, Markstrom's deal, a 6-year deal. Like that's for an older player. Matt Murray's only 26. A 4-year deal gets him to 30. He could even get better. This could be a bargain deal by the end of it. Yeah, Mark Borviewski. I think this is a huge win for Nashville. He can play up and down the roster, play in every situation. He showed last year he does have like like an offensive upside that nobody really saw. He's always physical. He's got a great attitude, and Nashville could really use that. I think this signing, including other signings that Nashville's made, gives them probably one of the best top 6 like D core in the entire league.
They were already
They were,
that
yeah,
age, and
absolutely,
I
yeah,
think this
they were
definitely
already.
helps that.
Hmm.
I think this is a little bit of an overpay for
Mm.
Mark
Two for
Borwiecki.
two.
2 years, $2 million. I think it's a little bit of an overpay for a guy who's going to be playing in your bottom pair most likely. Can play up and down lineup, but in Nashville's case, he's going to be
In
playing in the bottom
Nashville,
pair.
yeah, in Nashville he'll be playing bottom pair, but he'll be called up to play random time on the power play, random time on the penalty kill, and he's going to be really useful. And I think it's a fair deal for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, 7 goals, 18 points last year was his career high by far. I think he's more
Hmm.
of a 10-point guy. He's going to be the defensive mean player that he has been probably in Nashville. I don't know. If this was a 1-year, $2 million deal and he had a chance to prove himself in Nashville, I think that's a better idea for Nashville. But having that extra year, I think this is a candidate for honestly to be sent down in a year or
Mm.
two if he doesn't if he doesn't come in and really have a role with that team. Uh, Nashville being so deep in their defense, I think it'll be interesting to watch him over there.
You
Something I
know,
did want to mention is I was really surprised that Ottawa let him go.
with the money that he signed for, me as well. I'm really shocked.
Yeah,
I thought he was asking for a lot more, and that's why they didn't sign him. But
yeah,
this one really comes as a shock to me.
yeah. A guy that's been a character guy in that room for a long time. I
Hmm.
thought
Hmm.
that's someone you'd want to keep, but I guess they are going in a fresher direction in Ottawa.
Hmm.
Next guy, big signing of this day, Radco Goodis in Florida, signs for $2.5 million for 3 years. Um,
See, I think
interesting.
he's overpaid.
I think he's overpaid too. I think Radco Goodis is overrated as a defenseman. I think he's overrated because he's mean and he is a big hitter and he is the the prototypical hockey player that people like that love to love, right?
Hmm.
People wanted him on the Leafs. I didn't. I didn't want him anywhere near the Leafs. He's got decent analytics, but I
Yeah,
don't
he's a
know.
third pairing guy,
He's a yeah.
but his defensive game is overlooked because of his physical game.
Yes.
I think like he kind of lacks defensively because he makes up for physically, and I don't like his game. I'm not the biggest fan either. I think this is it's a bit of an overpay.
Yeah, a little over bit of an overpay, especially on the years. And especially because it's Florida,
Yeah.
because they need to shed money right now, not bring it
Hmm.
in. So I think this is a weird one for Florida. Um,
Though it does add a grit that I think Florida could really use, and because it's Florida, I think maybe they had to overpay a little bit just to get a bigger name, a bigger name like
yeah,
Gudis.
I could see that for sure.
Hmm.
I think Florida's not done. I think Florida has a lot more moves they could do,
For
especially to
sure,
get
for sure.
some money out of that system to help
Hmm.
with their economy. But I think Radco Goodis is an interesting signing. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, this isn't the last time we talk about Florida.
No. Florida had a lot of these kind of signings this day, and losing a couple guys still on free agency, including Mike Hoffman. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Who's next guy I want to talk about? You want to talk about Bobby Ryan?
Bobby Ryan. I really like this deal for Detroit to pick up Bobby Ryan. Big character guy, you know. I think if you look at his career, he's still NHL worthy. He's still competitive. He's still gonna, give you maybe obviously not a top six, but a bottom six scoring role. And for a team like Detroit that could use it, he's gonna fit in really well.
Yeah, Bobby Ryan obviously just winning the Masterton. So huge character coming into that room. I was a little bit surprised that Bobby Ryan decided to do this 1 year, $1 million bet on yourself kind of season.
I think in Detroit too, of all teams,
I think if you're going to do that, you want to put yourself in the best possible situation, to succeed.
Maybe if 2 years,
I guess he thinks that he's going to get more minutes in Detroit than he would in a team that's a little bit more competitive, but Detroit is not going to be competitive for a few more years. So going here, you're definitely betting on yourself individually, and maybe not hoping that GMs look a little bit past your stats relative to what team you're on. So I'm a little bit confused why Bobby Ryan chose Detroit, but otherwise I like Bobby Ryan. I think he's a good addition to anybody right now looking to add middle six veteran wingers. He can obviously still shoot the puck. That's not something you just lose. But he's getting older. He's 33 now. So we'll see what happens with Bobby Ryan. I hope he does well in Detroit, and we'll see how that team shapes up going into the season, because they still had a lot of work to do to get competitive. Man, Detroit.
Yeah, for sure. So I foresee them maybe re-signing him at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's only if he does well and some of these kids start coming in and they need a character guy to look up to. Keeping Bobby Ryan around wouldn't be the worst idea.
He would like to stay in Detroit for as long as he could, if he could. Like, he wants to be on a successful team for a long time. Who doesn't,
Yeah, of course.
So, all the best to him.
Cam Talbot. Cam Talbot signs $3.66666 for 3 years to the Minnesota Wild. Now, I don't know if I like this signing. He was one of the He was one of the first people to first goalies to be signed after Henrik Lundqvist. I think the Minnesota Wild could have had. I guess they thought that they weren't gonna get Markstrom or Holtby or any one of these other guys, so they decided to. I think Talbot's a little bit of a rung down on the starting goaltender ladder. He did have a little bit of a resurgence in Calgary last year after not playing well at all for a few seasons there in Edmonton. Had a 908 and an 893 in Edmonton over 2 years. Went to Philly for a year, was barely an NHL goalie, and had a little bit of resurgence last year with Calgary. And in 10 playoff games had a 924 save percentage. So I think this is more of a contract that they are paying for the guy he used to be rather than the guy he is. I don't think Talbot is a starting goalie anymore.
Neither do I.
I think this is a huge overpay, and I think they're going to get bitten by this, Minnesota.
I agree. We were talking about it in our Askarov video, that Minnesota's a team that could look to improve on goaltending, and I don't like Dubnyk. I do think maybe Talbot's a slight improvement, but that's not saying much.
Maybe currently.
Yeah, that's...
Dubnyk's getting older. Dubnyk's 37, I think. So he's
I don't like
aging.
Dubnyk, and I don't like Talbot. This was a trading a shit for a shinier shit,
But I said this, and I thought this when I was writing down my notes for Cam Talbot. I thought the exact same thing when they got Dubnyk originally. And then he had 3 or 4 crazy seasons. I think he was nominated for the Vezina once. He had a couple really good seasons in Minnesota. So Talbot could come here thinking he could reclaim a little bit of magic, work with their goalie coaches, and have a Dubnyk-esque career resurgence in
Fair.
his how old is he? His age 33 season.
33, yeah.
Next thing I want to talk about is Kyle Turris. Kyle Turris got bought out by Nashville earlier in the week. He was going to be paid $6 million.
He does get paid six.
Yeah,
still gets paid. Yeah.
He still gets paid that money. He was going to
Mhm.
be $6 million against the cap until 2023-24. I think buying him out was probably the right move for Nashville.
At this point in his career, for sure. He is digressing a little bit quicker than I think they thought he would. He's only 31, but he isn't the he's under a half point a game, and at the $6-something million they had him signed for, you just can't have that on your,
Yeah, it's a long buyout. I'm looking at it now. Cap friendly is $2 million against the cap for Nashville every year until I think 26-27. So it's a long buyout because there was so much left on his deal. Kyle Torres for Edmonton is interesting.
I like him at Edmonton. I really like him there.
Really? Okay. Why do you like him?
As a Sens fan, I see him in Edmonton kind of similar to the role that Spezza's playing in Toronto. He's going to play a bottom six center, and he's just going to, he's going to have a lot less stress, a lot less responsibility, a lot less, but compared to Nashville, he's still going to get looked on in Edmonton and, get criticized, but on the ice, it's going to be a little bit. Yeah, it's a tough hockey market, but his actual role on the ice will be a bottom six center, and he could just kind of help show the rookies coming in the ropes and take maybe a step back, and instead of trying to do it all himself, say, hey, we have amazing centers on this team, and just slide in there and fill out their depth. Edmonton's lacked a lot of depth, and if Kyle Turris, on a deal like this is fairly cheap, can be a 30, 40 point guy for Edmonton, I think it's a great deal for them.
I like your comparison to Jason Spezza, trying to appeal to the Leaf fan in me. But I'm going to disagree with you here. I don't like this signing for Edmonton. Mm-hmm. I think Edmonton, if they were to go out and get depth guys, they needed defensive help. This team is not lacking in offensive firepower. And I know Turris isn't going to be that in your bottom six, but you need guys in order to keep the puck out of your net. And you being an Ottawa fan know that Kyle Turris is not a defensive specialist.
No.
1.65 for the next 2 years won't hurt them if they decide to trade him or move on from him in some way. I think that they could have gone out and gotten a different center, defensive center, or a two-way guy that moves the needle more defensively than he does on the offensive side. People are going to be saying he doesn't like all the ex-Ottawa centers.
Yeah, no. You're a fan of Jason Spezza in I like Toronto.
Jason Spezza.
Yeah. Who, he himself is not historically much of a defensive specialist either. So
no, but
it's about fitting in the role, right? Like, if we'll see how it goes.
That's why I mentioned that. I do like the comparison there. So if they can do something like that, then sure. But it's interesting to see what happens there in Edmonton. Edmonton's got to do something because McDavid can't keep missing the playoffs, man.
No, that's. I want to see him in the playoffs. Like, for us as fans, it's like bad for the sport. You need to have the best player, in the in the league right now in the playoffs.
Yeah. Next guy I want to talk about, it's up a little further, Anton Khudobin. Anton Khudobin signing a 3-year, $3.3 million deal to remain in Dallas. I was really scared that some team was going to go out and give Khudobin $5 million a year and make them their starter, and I was super afraid for that team. He's not. He had a really, really good playoff. He is an A-tier backup goalie. He is not an NHL starter, I don't think. He's not.
I completely agree.
He's not a 60-game starter.
No.
He had a
30-40 tops.
He had a .930 save percentage in 30 games as Bishop's backup, and in 25 games of the playoffs at 917, absolutely went off in the playoffs. It was a huge story in Dallas. It was a huge reason why they got to the final. And I think Dallas keeping him is perfect. I was worried that someone was going to give him way too much money.
Yeah, for Dallas, they got the money they wanted, and I feel Khudobin got the term he wanted. He wanted the third year, and Dallas wanted the lower money. They didn't want to give him 5.5.
Yeah.
They didn't want to give him 5.5 for 3. They were like, okay, we'll give you 3, but you have to take what we think you're worth.
Moving on to another goalie, I want to hear what you think about Jacob Markstrom in Calgary. $6 million for 6 years.
I think he's worth the cap hit right now, but I don't like the term on this contract. He had he was kind of forced into the starter role in Vancouver, and he's put up decent numbers, but it's not until this year that he really showed that he's, could be a starter. He's in his prime. I don't know how many years he has left. Like the first half of this contract could be really good, but the second half of this contract, you're paying $6 million for a guy who's just maybe a backup. That could be a huge problem for Calgary, especially since their core right now is in their prime. And so if they don't achieve anything in the first 2 years of this contract, and now they're stuck with an aging, core with a goalie who's, overpaid, this could be a huge problem for Calgary going forward. I'm a little turned off with this signing.
I agree with you on the longevity part of it.
Mm-hmm.
This will bring him into his age 36 season. Not a lot of goalies are elite that long into their career.
No.
So this could end up looking like a Corey Schneider contract in 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
With a guy who is not really an NHL guy anymore, making $6 million, and you're trying to figure out what to do with him, but no one wants to take him because he's making $6 million. It's tough. But Calgary gets their guy in the short term. For them, I think they can figure that out later. They get their guy in the short term. They get probably their best goalie, their best starting goalie since Mika Kiprusoff retired.
Absolutely.
In Calgary. I like Jacob Markstrom. Always been a fan of his, even going back
Same.
to Florida. I think he didn't quite reach his potential until he got to Vancouver and started playing on a regular basis. He's played 260-game seasons in 17-18, 18-19, and then had his good season last year as well. So he's been pretty consistent, and I think Vancouver's going to miss not having him, but I think Thatcher Demko is the guy they're going forward, but Calgary getting their guy. Big save Dave Riddick, not the starter that I think they wanted him to be. So they went out and solved that hole. I think Calgary looks a lot better with Markstrom in net, and a goaltender can do
For sure.
magical things to your hockey team. You can go from worst in the league to first in the league really fast with a hot goalie, and you can win whole playoffs. You can win the Stanley Cup with a hot goalie.
He showed that.
So
Demko showed that.
Demko came in and just blew everyone's socks off. So I think that made it easier for Vancouver to let him go. But I definitely agree with the last, especially the last 2-3 seasons. Maybe not the third season, but definitely the last 2. This contract could look kind of bad.
Yeah. Especially if they don't achieve. If Calgary wins the cup with this with Markstrom,
oh yeah,
they'll shut up about it in 5 years from now. But if they don't, then this could be a real turning point for the organization.
Yeah, winning a Stanley Cup fixes everything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
you can pay Jacob Markstrom $9 million for the next 10 years. If they win a couple cups, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. And you're looked at as a genius.
And they're looked at as a genius, no matter what he's paid. People mention it, but they'll be like, "Hey, man, you want a cup?" And they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you're right," and then they'll shut up. Who's the next big guy on this list we want to talk about? Because we have to scroll up a little bit. Justin Schultz, I think,
Justin
is
Schultz. Yep.
the next big player on this list. Washington snags him up for 2 years at $4 million. Right-hand shot defenseman, came from Pittsburgh.
I think this is a bit of an overpayment.
I think so too.
He has not had a good full season in a long time, and now they're paying him for 2.
I agree. I think this
Yeah,
is another one of those. I mentioned it with Cam Talbot paying him for the player he was, not the player he is right now. He is an offensive specialist. He's a power play guy. That role
and
is
he's just not. Yeah, he's not
that
anymore
role is
though.
also not available in Washington. John Carlson is their guy offensively. Having Schultz here and expecting him to play a second power play middle, second pairing role is an interesting gamble on Washington's part. Big offensive potential, but
For sure, but
we'll see if he hits it again. He hit the 51 point total, 78 games in 16-17 with Pittsburgh, but in 3 seasons since had a point total of 27, 15, and 12. 12 points last year. We'll move on to the ex-Hab. I almost said Hab.
yeah,
The ex-Washington Capital, Braden Holtby. What do you think?
I think this, an incredible win for Vancouver. I thought Lundqvist would be going to Vancouver, and I thought that was going to be a big deal. But Braden Holtby going to Vancouver, this is I'm amazed that they pulled this one together.
Yeah, 2 years, $4.3 million for Braden Holtby. This is another one of those. Braden Holtby needs to have a good season in Vancouver.
Right? Yeah.
It's only 2 years. It's only 2 years, but he won't be the guy in Vancouver. Demko is going to be there, obviously. It's going to be a 1A, 1B situation. If Holtby can regain a little bit of the magic, he hasn't had a really good season since they won the Cup. And he didn't even have a good regular season that year. He had a great playoff. A little bit of an iffy regular season. He had a 907 and 17-18. He had an 897 save percentage last year in 48 games. That's like borderline you're not an NHL goalie.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So he needs to fix that. If he can fix that into Vancouver, I think he'll be fine out there. I think they're signing him more to be a leadership guy.
For sure. His role is as a backup is to lead Demko to be a starter one day, not put up amazing numbers.
No. I don't think they're planning on starting him 60 games or nothing. So I don't think his numbers are going to matter as much as what he does in the dressing room. So I think that's more of one of those signings. But yeah, I'm a little bit iffy on this signing. I like that they got a goalie a decent veteran goalie to play with Demko. I think that's big for a young goaltender and his development. I thought it would be Lundqvist. I was almost convinced when you said that to me. I was like, okay, that's happening.
Yeah.
But,
right, just how it sounded pretty good.
Yeah, but Braden Holtby is a good player. I think he'll have a good time in Vancouver.
I have Chris Tanev going to Calgary.
Chris Tanev in Calgary. 4 years, $4.5 million deal for Chris Tanev.
I think that's exactly what he's worth.
Yeah, I think so too. I think
second
it's a good
pairing.
deal.
Yeah, right shot.
He's their TJ Brody replacement. We will get to. Signed for basically what he was getting paid in Vancouver. He's making 4.45 in Vancouver, and he's making 4.5 now. So like a little baby raise. But he's making exactly what he was making over there. He's not a flashy offensive guy, but he's a very, very good defenseman. 20 points last year, 69 games. Yeah, I think this is a good signing. I think any team who picks up Chris Tanev is automatically better in the defensive zone.
Absolutely. It's an improvement on any team.
Yeah.
And I think particularly for Calgary, when you have a goalie coming from Vancouver to have a defenseman as well, that could be really good for Calgary's goals against average.
Just scrolling up the list here. Next, we got Kevin Shattenkirk signing in Anaheim. 3 years, $3.9 million for Kevin Shattenkirk. This is an interesting move by Anaheim and by Shattenkirk going out there, leaving the Stanley Cup winning Tampa Bay Lightning. But Shattenkirk going out and getting his money, man. That's
I feel like this year he had a really great run. that if he hadn't had, he'd have made a much less this coming season. Like I'm really impressed by the year he had. I've always been really critical of Shattenkirk's game, and stepped it up this season, stepped it up in the playoffs, and I think he's really earned it. The contract, I got to give it to him.
Yeah, gets bought out by the Rangers, picked up by Tampa on a 1-year bet on me contract, wins the Stanley Cup, and then goes to Anaheim and gets paid. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Anaheim is fighting a rebuild right now. They're trying to stay competitive.
They
Shattenkirk
need
helps that.
scoring. They need
Yes.
goal scoring, and Kevin Shattenkirk likes to score. So
Yeah, I think he's a good fit out there for Anaheim. Next big guy on, actually not really a big guy, but I think a notable signing is Vinnie Hinastroza in Florida.
I think this is a great deal for Florida. Is a bottom six guy for under $1 million. It's exactly what you want. It's cheap, it keeps you competitive, and for a team like Florida that doesn't have a lot going for them, it's perfect to fill out their bottom six.
Yeah, I think so too. Hinastroza, I think, is an underrated player. I think he's actually very good. He didn't get qualified by Arizona, which I was a little bit surprised about. And then I thought about it more, and it's Arizona, so they're letting guys go. I think Florida gets a little bit of an under radar signing as one of the best of the day, as far as that level of depth guys are concerned.
For sure.
He had 39 points in 72 games on a low-scoring Florida team 2 years ago, and I think he in Florida could step in and fill any one of their holes on the wing. In the top six, bottom six, power play, he penalty kills a little bit. Yeah, I really like this signing. I think it's a little bit under the radar, and Florida kind of snuck this guy out from everybody. So I think he's gonna have a really good year there.
And I want to compare it to a signing, a later signing for Matthias Janmark for Chicago. I feel like it's a comparable in role. Like you get your third line center. Chicago is a team that had Vinnie Hinastroza too. So it's kind of like maybe a similar role. And you compare the cost in these two contracts, and it's like, oh, it's a bargain for Florida. I think this is a huge signing. When you look at the comparables in the free agency.
And along the same lines, Alex Weinberg also going to Florida.
Yeah, the next big
$2.25 million. Alex Weinberg was bought out by the Columbus Blue Jackets.
I'm surprised that there was no trade market for him. To be honest, I feel like he was maybe a little bit even underpaid by Florida. I think he could have signed a little bit more with a different team. I'm really surprised that there wasn't a market. This is kind of a shock to me.
Columbus needed to shed a little bit of salary. $4.9 million for the next couple of years was bought out by Calgary. They'll have a low cap hit based on that buyout for a long time. Alex Weinberg had an amazing season in 16-17. He scored 59 points in 80 games. That's a big season for a centerman of his caliber, and still a young guy at the time, and still is. He's still, I think, 26. But hasn't quite found it again. Had 35, 25, and 22-point seasons since. Obviously, last year was shortened, so he would have gotten probably closer into the 30s. But I think if they hit on this guy and he becomes a middle six center and a high-scoring producing center for Florida, I think this is going to look really good in a few years. He had 5 points in 10 games in the playoffs. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he came out for Columbus. He was one of the. He wasn't huge, but he played the middle six role really well. And I feel like in Columbus, because he had that one good year, that they had always expected him to be a number 1-2 kind of center, maybe like a number 2 center. And I don't think he is that good. But I think as a third line center, he could be really amazing. And on Florida, especially with Hinastroza, your center depth here is really strong now.
Yeah, I think another thing I want to mention quickly is I think Weinberg fits better in Florida than he does in Columbus.
For sure.
Weinberg, after playing him as a Leafs fan, playing Columbus in the first round or the play-in round, Weinberg, when he was on the ice, wasn't very hard to play against. And Columbus likes to play that grind you down defensive style hockey that Torts is known for, their coach.
Mm-hmm.
Weinberg is not that guy. Weinberg, I think, fits into the Joe Quenneville system a lot better. And we'll see if that has any effect on his play and his stats next year. Next guy I want to talk about is Corey Crawford. Corey Crawford, 2 years, $3.9 million to sign in New Jersey. I don't know what to think about this signing. I think it's weird that Chicago didn't want to keep him. He thought it was weird. I saw articles about he was a little bit mad at the Chicago team management for not getting a contract from them. He's obviously had huge injury history in the last couple of years, but in 40 games had a .917 save percentage, and over the last decade has been probably in the top 3 or 4 goaltenders of the decade, in my opinion. He's won a couple Stanley Cups with Chicago, obviously. I think severely underrated when he's healthy. He's one of the best goalies in the league. But within his injury history, I don't know. It's always a question mark.
Yeah, obviously, that injury history for me, I feel like I'm a little bit more critical on people's injury histories. I wouldn't re-sign Crawford. I would want to retire if I were Crawford. At this point, like seeing him trying to come back from concussions, it's really scary to watch him play sometimes.
I thought he was gonna retire a few years ago when he
a few years ago
to play, and he's still going. He still wants to play. Obviously, he's not going to be the guy in New Jersey. I think Mackenzie Blackwood is their guy going forward. So this is another example of established starting goalie who's still very good to be a 1B to a younger kid. And moving on to probably, in my opinion, the biggest steal of the day. Tory Krug signs in St. Louis for 7 years at $6.5 million a year. I have no clue why Boston did not re-sign Tory Krug.
Can't afford him. They don't have the money. They didn't have that much money.
You make room. You get rid of excess contract. David Krejci's sitting there making $7.2 million a year. I know he's a good player and all that, but he's not worth that much. You buy him out for the season. You make room. Tory Krug has been one of the best defensemen offensively in the Eastern Conference for a few years. And St. Louis, as a Leafs fan, I am so happy that he is no longer in my division. Last few years, 49 points, 53 points, 59 points, 51 points. The man puts up points, and he's a prick to play against. And Boston has taken a huge L here for not re-signing Tory Krug. I think St. Louis has made a little bit of a steal of the draft here, or steal of the free agent signing, letting Pietrangelo go for 8.8 that he ended up signing for. We'll talk about him in a future video. And getting Tory Krug for long term at 6.5. I think that's amazing for St. Louis.
I'm going to disagree. I think this is a really sketchy signing for a guy that might have passed his prime. I think I like Tory Krug. Don't get me wrong, but his 5-on-5 play is abysmal. He's a defensive liability, and he gets a lot of points, but a lot of those points are on the power play. I'm not a fan. I'm really critical of defensemen that play an offensive style and lack the defensive edge. So maybe I'm biased, but I think this is a huge risk for a guy that's showed in the past playoffs that he just doesn't have the defensive edge to like play a second pairing and like handle that defensive responsibility. He could only score as a second pairing, and I thought it was iffy this season. I think part of the reason that Boston didn't re-sign him was them thinking maybe he's past his prime. We're not going to spend millions of dollars on long term for a guy who we don't think has that much in him anymore. And I think there's some question marks I see, you can't pass up a 50, 60, point defenseman, but for a guy who might cost you, if a team like St. Louis that wants to stay competitive, to have a 5-on-5 defensive liability, I think it's a risk.
I see what you mean by that being a little bit risky, but he's not comparable to Pietrangelo in the defensive zone. I don't mean
no, for sure, no.
Honestly.
Yeah.
If Tory Krug signed for even the $7 or $8 million range in St. Louis, I would agree with you and be like, wait a second, that's too much money for a guy who's not going to be a two-way guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to step into St. Louis and be the power play guy. There's no one. Justin Falk does a little bit of power play, but Tory Krug is superior in that sense. He doesn't need to be the shutdown guy.
For sure.
I'm just looking at the list right now. Colton Parayko is still on that team. Scandella, Robert Bortuzzo. They got guys who are defensive specialists. Big defensive specialists, and they need a guy who can come in and run a power play. And there's something to be said to being able to run an NHL power play, even if he puts up that many points, or most of them or half of them, I don't know what the amount is, on the power play. I think that's big, and it's $6.5 million. I think that's usable. I don't think he's past his prime yet. He's still only 29. I think he's still in the middle of his prime. Guys like this don't tend to start trending downward until they get to like their mid to late 30s. On average, obviously. And I don't think he's as bad in the defensive zone as you say he is. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's not great by any means stretch of the imagination. But I
feel like he's 5-on-5. I'd rather him be a third pair, but otherwise he's a second pair. That's like defensively, that's just that. I'd still see him as an NHL defenseman, and I like I completely agree with the fit in St. Louis. I think it's amazing, but with like the money and contract, and I think it's a little bit risky.
No. I think this man puts up 50 points every season, mm-hmm. and that's
tough to overlook.
That's tough to go, no, I can't sign that player.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know the analytics off the top of my head, so
mm-hmm.
maybe we can discuss that later. Anyway, moving on to TJ Brody.
Now, this is the defenseman I love.
4 years, $5 million a year. As a Leafs fan, I am so happy that this man is a Toronto Maple Leaf.
As a Sens fan, I'm kind of pissed because it makes Toronto, it makes their defenseman, defense core like amazing now. This is like the signing I think that they needed.
TJ Brody is a left shot, plays the right side, and he's played the right side for years with Mark Giordano in Calgary. He's not a guy that's going to put up 50 points. He'll put up 30-ish, right, every year. Sometimes
but he'll make the guy who puts up 50 look even better.
He'll make Morgan Rielly really, really good. Like, not that he isn't, but he'll make him look a lot better than he has been
mm-hmm.
over the last few seasons. And he's going to play with Rielly, and he's going to be the best defensive partner that Morgan Rielly has ever had.
Rielly's never had a partner his entire career.
He's never had a partner. Going back, if I saw a list on Twitter of defensive partners that he's played with the majority of the season, and it's just awful, dude. It's Tyson Barrie, Nikita Zaitsev, Cody Ceci, Matt Hunwick, Ron Hainsey. He's never played.
It's sad that Zaitsev might be the best pair that Rielly's ever had.
I know, right? Barry is like, you only played a little bit with Barry, but Barry was not messing well with Rielly.
No,
I think this will
chemistry didn't fit.
I think this will be very, very good for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And even if he doesn't end up playing with Rielly all the time, Muzzin and Brody is scary too.
Mm-hmm.
As like if they want to throw the defensive line on the ice, he's obviously going to be. Muzzin and him would be really good in that sense, but I think he's destined for the top line. Big minutes guy. Love this signing.
I feel like Giordano, his former partner, plays a lot like Rielly, but Rielly's better. So I your pro scouting on this one, I feel for Toronto is spot on for a guy to play with Rielly. He's your number 2 or 3 defenseman in Toronto now, and that's what they've needed, for years. And
Yeah, and I think the $5 million cap hit is perfect.
Perfect.
And
They
yeah, I
didn't
am
spend
ecstatic.
$9 million on Pietrangelo,
Yeah, yeah, it was a
which
little
is
bit.
important.
I've always said that I don't think the Leafs need a Pietrangelo. They need TJ Brody and Guy. Like they just need players, average guys, especially in the bottom six. But Brody is a top pairing defenseman on this team now. They needed him. Zach Bogosian as an option. The Leafs, I don't think, are done. I think there's a lot of things that they are still going to do on the back end. But they just need replacement level guys that can get the puck to their forwards and play solid defensively. And I said this years ago, Brody would be a huge
Yeah,
fit for the
when
Leafs.
it was when Giordano had his Norris, like his amazing season, you were like, you know who we need? His partner.
Yeah, the other guy.
Hmm.
Right? No one was talking about TJ Brody. Everyone was like, Mark Giordano was having a resurgence. No one looked at Brody, and I was like, that's the guy we need. Need to get him right now, and he ended up signing him to free agency. So
Huge comparable here, where Doughty and Muzzin, where Doughty was really highly looked right now for his when he was going to win a Norris, and everybody was like, the other guy. Look at the other guy, who he's with. That was also an amazing partner. And Toronto to have picked up both of them, I think that's an interesting comparison to the two.
all right, I think the last guy we're going to talk about, this is just a review for October 9th, the first day of free agency. The last guy I have on my list, anyway, for this day, Wayne Simmonds,
Mm-hmm.
goes to Toronto, a one year, $1.5 million. I think this is a good signing for Toronto. I think it's a good signing for Wayne Simmonds. He gets to come home and play with a team that he's been linked to for a long time.
Finally.
Finally, there've been talks about Wayne Simmonds coming to Toronto since he was playing with Philly.
Mm-hmm.
It's been so long. I think he finally gets to come here and show Leafs fans what he can do. I don't think anyone expects him to put up 60 points and 25 goals this year. He's going to be a third, maybe fourth line winger that hits people and has a gritty style of play and plays on a power play and sits in front of the opposing goalie and bangs a bunch of pucks in. On the power play, he's going to get probably most of his goals on the power play. I would be shocked if they didn't put him on the first power play line with
Mm-hmm.
Matthews and
With
Marner on their
Tavares.
wing and Tavares and Riley.
I have a feeling Tavares and him would have an interesting goal scoring combination.
Yeah, I think so too. They play a similar, around the net to score your goals
Mm-hmm.
style of play. Obviously, they're not the same player. They're
No.
not even close to the same player, but they score goals in similar ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Simmonds brings a lot of intangibles that the Leafs do not have. They just don't have this kind of
For
player.
sure. You look
And
at Tampa Bay having won. The team that they put on the ice had a lot of physicality and grit to it, and during the season, it kind of that physicality and grit, especially in today's NHL, gets a little bit passed up for skill and speed, but in the playoffs, it's a grind, and you need to have that on your team. And he's a guy who can grind.
yeah, 100% this is a playoff signing.
I know a few days ago, going into the draft, I was worried that Toronto would just be stagnant
Mm-hmm.
and throw out the same kind of team and just fall flat again. But nope, Dope was saying we're going to make the changes for the better, and I'm excited to see how it goes.
Man, we'll probably talk about this leading up to the regular season, but the Leafs have a lot of players in that role of third, fourth line winger now, with all the signings that they've accumulated over the last couple of days, and their own players that they already had, and guys who are going to come up from the Marlies and overseas. They got a lot of options there now. So
Yeah, their questions about depth are going to be answered.
yeah, they're gonna have an interesting time creating a lineup, and I think we'll talk about that closer to when the regular season starts again. We'll do a little bit of a preview for that.
Yeah, training camp for Toronto is going to be incredible. I'd love to I'd love to watch that, be in the stands and just watch.
Is there anyone you want to talk about on day one of October
That
9th?
that was my full list. I had actually no a one Nick Cousins to Nashville.
Nick Cousins.
Yeah,
I did skip over him. Where is
yeah.
he? There he is.
I think it's a great move for Nashville. He's cheaper than Torres, saves a lot of cap space, and it keeps their center depth strong. And I know that they're a team that does have good centers, but maybe like this past year their centers didn't play as well as they can. And I think it's a good move for Nashville.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, day one was busy. It was very busy on October 9th. We waited to make the video till today. We're going to make separate videos for the rest of the days going forward, so look out for those on the channel. Let us know who you think got away with the best player and the best contract, or just the best signing overall. Let us know what you think about all these and what the worst one was, because there are a couple of questionable ones that we talked about. Look out for more videos on the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching.